it's Muir. In the last video, we ran over a pancake die with a car, and in this case it was a Model X, which is kind of fun, but it didn't do what we wanted it to do. It did not cut through our metal the way that we were hoping to. So the next question that I get a lot is, can I use a hammer on a pancake die and have that cut through until I, of course, get a hydraulic press? Now, I can think of a number of reasons that you would not want to use a hammer on your pancake die. And hopefully you would recognize some of those as well. But I do have a pancake die that I'm willing to sacrifice for you guys. It actually fared pretty well with our test of running it over with the car. But let's see what happens when we use a hammer. So here I have, this is actually a really big bench block. So it's an 8x10 bench block. I love this thing. And what I now have is I've got the same bracelet die that we used last time, Kevin Potter's B006. It's a bracelet about 1.5 inches wide, 6 inches long. So I've got 3 different hammers that I'm going to try. I've got a 1-pound brass hammer, a weighted rawhide, and then of course I have just like a normal drywall hammer. I do not have like a 3-pound hammer. Some people have that. You can always give that a try. But let's see what happens when we go through and try breaking this through with a hammer. Okay, so those were some really good heavy blows, and I could see that I actually started to bend in through my metal and kind of mark it. You can see that impression that's been made there. And with the rawhide mallet, still no breaking through. But the other thing that kind of worries me is that I did see distortion happening here on my die itself. So again, you know, that's going to definitely be something that shortens the life of your bracelet die. So let's see what happens when we use now the brass hammer. Oh, and see, my metal didn't even stay where it was supposed to. It jumped out of place. Now this time I definitely got a little better impression. Okay, I deepened the impression a bit here, and that's kind of to be expected because our brass hammer has a little less give, actually a lot less give, than what a rawhide mallet was. But again, I'm only getting an impression. Now keep in mind, this is 18 gauge, so if we were to try to do this with a hammer, we're going to be working at it for quite a bit of time. But I don't know that my die would survive a whole long time. And I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but do you see it starting to bow out? And again, part of that is because I'm beginning to distort and stretch that die. Just like when you use a hammer on a piece of metal and you pinch it in between, you know, let's say you've got your hammer and a bench block, it's going to stretch that metal. And that's exactly what's happening here. All right, let's put this back in. We'll try this with our drywall hammer. All right, last time. Okay, now I've given this quite a few whacks, and I could definitely see where I'm starting to shear a little bit just down here at the bottom edge of this, and part of that's because there's so little metal there to cut. Now in this case, I'm going to have to go and pry this part open real quick and see if we can get our metal out and see exactly what we have to work with, or what we're working with now. All right, I was able to just kind of manipulate this with my hands and slip it out a bit. So I don't know if you guys can see this really well in the video or not. The impression is definitely deeper. There was a cut that was starting to happen. It was just barely beginning. And again, this is right here along that thinner edge. I was getting a deeper impression. So, you know, and here we're getting closer to being able to cut this out. You guys can kind of see how that's now been pushed through a little bit more. And if I were to continue to go, I'm sure I would be able to cut through this. Now, be that said, and keep in mind, this is 18 gauge, so it's gonna definitely take some effort to get through that. So I guess the answer is, can I cut through with a hammer? Yeah, you can, but that also means you're probably gonna have one use of your die. Check that out now. Look at that arch that's happened in here. And what's happening, and now if I try to push this down and try to see how the fit is, I am going to start rubbing here along this edge because now I've begun to stretch my metal on this. So yes, you can cut through this with a hammer, but you might limit the life of your die to 1, maybe 2 cuts. So that's something that you want to think about if you're considering getting a pancake die and going at it with a hammer. I don't think that's a great idea. So now we've seen what happens if you try to run over this with a car. We've seen what happens if you try to hammer it out. Basically what's going to come back down to is you need to have the right tools for the job. Yes, the tools for the job can sometimes be a little bit costly. So in the meantime, if you can't afford to buy a hydraulic press, find someone who does have it. Offer to buy the die, offer to buy the material, and then offer to pay them to cut it for you. And that would definitely be a little more economical way to go rather than going at your dies with a hammer or a car or anything else like that. So there are a lot of different options that you have. Just be creative, but not quite that creative. I hope that helps and answers your questions a little bit. We'll see you guys at the next Tool Time Tuesday.